Yes.
Oh, I hate that.
Well, we're recording. Welcome everybody to Death Overdraft's Happy Hour, Week 6, virtual. Cheers.
We've been drinking for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I have a very, people used to choose their wine by the labels. I do my beer now. The Mortician Black IPA.
Ooh, fancy.
Fancy, yeah. So welcome all that are joining us. Rose?
You know, you can support, I just want to say, small breweries around Los Angeles or maybe around where you are. A lot of breweries do pickup or delivery if you actually really, really like beer.
Oh, yeah.
So this is why we started this whole happy hour, is because we love beer.
Yeah. So glad we're having people join us, and let's see where people are. Becca's in Connecticut.
Birgitta, you made it. Hello.
So Becca, I was trying to understand your answer to what holiday is your favorite, and basically it was I don't know. I'm like I don't know. They're good and bad because I work retail currently. Right. I'm going to switch over, Amber, and have you answer some of these other beginning questions as I kind of do my greeting to the group. So welcome everybody. So good to have you here. As Jill already shared, we started these as our combination of our passions of drinking beer and holding space and conversation around death and dying. And we're so glad that we have you as our companion happy hours, and that it started in LA, but now we have people from all over the country joining us, and up north in Canada. So
hasn't this been quite a fun 6 weeks? I mean, I know COVID is shitty, but for the first time, we're able to actually gather in a community that takes shape online and have a drink and share topical information from a bunch of different people. It's just, for me personally, I think it's been great, and I love that your idea went digital. So sorry, can I do an initial cheers to thanks for coming back and coming in general. Cheers.
Yes. So just a couple other announcements and kind of grounding rules for the happy hour. This is, like I said, I'm Stephanie Elkins, Continuum of Care Coach for Be Present Care. I'm here in community with and for you, along with my Dive Into Death colleagues, Jill, Amber, Rocio, and Megan. Can you guys all wave? And we have a really amazing website to really capture all this information that we're sharing, because at least for Megan and I, we're link lovers and sharing information and cutting and paste different links. So we have and Rocio's full of, we're all full of knowledge and interviewing people that we are great. So we now have a place for all that information to sit, which is diveintodeath.com. So this information that we're giving to you, instead of just putting it in a newsletter in a chat box, you have a place that you can go back to and revisit the information on these different topics. So just know that that's there for you. And so anything that's shared on this chat or resources we talk to is going to now live on diveintodeath.com.
It'll be a one-stop informational hub. So if you do get a little tipsy during the happy hour and you don't remember what we were talking about, because we are actually trying to get across good information, you can just always go back and rewatch. Or if you're working in the death space and you're okay, what did they say about this, or what was the conversation around this, you can always go back and reference as well.
And you can always email us. You can go to our contact page and you can send a message. It'll go to me and I can either forward it to whoever you need it to get to, or help answer your questions in whatever way possible.
And also with other amazing events going on. So we have our themed work that we're doing, that we have each week that we'll be talking about, but there's other events. Rocio's doing dream events. Megan has an amazing event coming up for Motherless Mothers, an ensemble of individuals talking about their experiences with that. So we're really, it's evolving, and we're also going to be evolving in the Reimagine Festival space, where Death Overdraft happy hours started. Okay. So what are some of the other things I wanted to share with you? Once again, your involvement on this call is whatever you're comfortable with. You can show your video, you cannot show your video, everything's via chat. And if you want to personally send information to Amber, who's kind of, or me monitoring the chat, if you want to share something privately, whatever you're comfortable with. If the subject matter and anything we can talk about gets too heavy, this is a safe space to talk, but we're also not a bereavement and grief support group. So if there's anything, if that comes up that's too much, you can jump off and we won't take it personally. I sometimes take it personally at first, but my colleagues will be like, Stephanie, it wasn't you. Okay. So that's something.
Sometimes it's you. I'm just kidding, but I'm really excited about this week.
Yes.
I really want to jump in.
Yes. So this week we're starting. So one of the questions that we asked is, what's your favorite or not favorite holiday? Because we're going to be talking about Walpurgisnacht.
Yes, you did it.
Yay, I did it right for the first time. So that's our theme for today.
You've only had a week to rehearse.
I know. So we're going to get into that. Next week, I just want to give a quick shout out to the death work in technology, what's going on. Is that right, Megan? I think that's death in the technical field. Like, how are we sharing information? How are people utilizing it? And then after that, the dream state. So those are just coming up. But right now, I don't know if you want to, Amber, really quickly look at the holidays, what people have showed up, and then we can go into our next chat question that I'll put in.
It looks like we had some Halloweens, we had some Christmases. I don't know, does anybody else, we had a lot of people saying where they were from. Does anybody want to put out what their favorite holiday is or their least favorite holiday? Easter.
Mm-hmm.
Easter was my favorite when I was a little kid. I think like a lot of holidays meant, the holidays that I don't like as much now, I loved as a child, which I don't know if that just means that I'm like really sad and bitter inside or like what it is.
I think that you guys can appreciate my favorite holiday, at least this year, was Advanced Healthcare Decision Day. Not to like hone it in. National Healthcare Decision Day was a good one. I was very active and I felt like empowered to have a conversation, but I'll let that go. If you need more information, you know where to find it. But that was my favorite holiday, talking about those conversations. But we're going to now go into our group. Our first, so how it works is we have group chats. We have our group chats. We have prompt questions that we're going to put in there as a prompt to kind of get us talking about the topic. And then Amber is going to be sharing a little bit more information and reflection as we move forward, talking about Walpurgisnacht.
All right, so I got the first.
Okay, she put it in there. So what makes, and then you guys can respond in the box. What makes a holiday special? A, ritual. I love fasting, repenting, giving up things. B, food and drink, excuse to party, eat too much carbs and get drunk.
What?
C, what makes a holiday special? Connection to community, culture, bring on the gifts. B, connection to faith, bring on prayer, blessings, and high power. E, all of the above, none of the above. G, other. What kind of makes a holiday special for you? Once again, these are just prompts to get your juices flowing on what's important to you for a holiday.
Holidays are no longer special to me now that my dad is dead. And I don't mean that in like, a dream crushing kind of way. It's just like a chore to get together with, I'm an only child, so it's like just me and my mom, and it's like kind of weird. So it's like we evolved past holidays because they just disassembled when the family disassembled.
Yeah, I think it's like living each day, right? Like you want to honor the moment and day, not like a holiday. And I think that's something.
Right. YOLO.
Yeah. And I think there's another colleague out there, the grief coach, which, these holidays are different for people depending on their experiences. So it's supporting people through these times where holidays aren't like all that anymore.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what do we have, Amber? What's showing up for us?
I'm seeing a lot of E's, a lot of E. So all of the above. I'm seeing C's, some B's. So a lot of food and drinks, which is what today is kind of about. So that's good. You're in the right place for the people that picked B. Seeing G, dressing up in costumes. Couple of A's, not as many A's, not as many people are wanting to give up stuff. It's all right.
Yeah, most people at holidays are like, treat yourself, not, you know, put yourself in some kind of like servitude. But that's like in some, you know, cultures, that's like what a holiday is all about.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the cultural kind of, when you take about it, the cultural kind of about it, and maybe not so much the ritual.
Right.
And I just want to point out the connection and what it's represented over time. It's like the history of looking at May 1st and what's it's represented, and then historically its connection to labor and the labor movement. And I think that in terms of how it's shifted with cultures, like people, you know, especially in the United States or in some Western countries, like the workaholism is like the production, right? And so the time that you get to actually celebrate a holiday doesn't mean that you're not using it as a reverence for what it was made for, but really like it's a moment for people to just like let go, right? And to just try to connect in a different way. So I definitely see that connection happening in a really powerful way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost wonder, as you were saying that, I was thinking a lot, because we'll be talking about just the way that things complement each other, and the way that a holiday now is in a lot of ways how funerals should, I almost said should, and I try to not ever say that, but
That's
how
right.
I know the shoulding all over things, but kind of how you hope that funerals should be, that it's like a time to pause and reflect. Like we're always like busy. What are you doing? What are you working on? Where are you going? And a funeral and holidays are all about pausing. And I don't know, Jill, maybe that's why like it's hard for me to do holidays now, because I'm not good at pausing. I get frustrated because I have to like stop and go do things and see my family, and there's like a lot of guilt in that too, that I'm like, I feel bad that I don't want to see my family, but it makes me feel sad, because I remember how things were when I was little and the holidays and everybody was alive still. I have the same thing. A lot of my family is dead now. So
Right.
like holidays, like people get smaller and smaller, and we move farther and farther apart. So they always feel so conflicted.
Yeah, there's so much expectations around holidays, right? Like we're talking about it here. I was trying to pull out like what makes it special as we're coming up. It's not always special in a good way. It brings up other feelings of grief, of like expectations, of all this kind of stuff. Not just the food and the ritual, but also all those kind of dynamic emotions that are set around it. So do you want to go kind of into this kind of interesting holiday that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, so I'm going to start off by saying I'm going to do a little COA, so it's a covering my ass, because the more that I read about this holiday, the more I realized that there was like an overwhelming amount of information on it, and it's because it was so widespread in Northern Europe. So many people, so it appeared from what I'd seen that it started off as like a Roman holiday to celebrate the goddess of flowers. So celebrating spring, celebrating things come in. But as it spread, it changed and it altered. Different cultures or different European cultures call it different things. Like I saw Megan brought up Beltane. I think it's somebody can correct me on that, Vapsu in Finnish. So it's this holiday that all of us celebrate because we all celebrate the same idea of renewal and spring and leaving winter, but it has so many different names and smaller aspects. And the witches seems mostly Germanic based. Let's see, what else? I thought it would be a really special way, and we kind of have already been digging into this just with our chat questions, but I just thought it would be a really special way to reflect on the time that we're living in. So even though we're social distancing, we're still really clamoring for ways to be near each other. And this in itself is a really great example of it. We want to drink, we want to be together, we need that social connection with each other. And COVID-19 has been almost like a forced winter. So we've all had to sort of like scatter. And I thought that this was a really great time to sort of talk about like the thought of getting to go back outside soon, I hope, and how it's just sort of interesting that it is falling in line with this holiday. And it kind of made me think more about how our ancestors were victim to the same thing that we are. Like we have all these technological advancements, right? We're on this computer and it theoretically makes things easier. I don't know. I know like a lot of us have had issues getting on, but we're still held victim to a virus, something small that we can't see, that did the same thing to us in 1918 when we had the Spanish flu, the same thing with the Black Plague. And we're still following the same cycles, the way that virus, plants, life, everything responds to cold, humidity, and heat. Hopefully that made sense. That was either eloquent or it made no sense, and I'm really sorry.
I followed you the whole way. And then, you know, also how this even started is like, it's a group of women who are doing something that feels ancestral, like it comes to us like from the past, from other people. Like most of the people in here are women, you know, in death work. And so like when people say like, you know, witches or whatever, it's more of like a woman of craft, whatever that craft kind of like takes place, whether it be through nature, through being present, through, you know, all of the offerings that we offer in the birth and death space and the life space. Just being a woman and what it means, what that means in the world.
I wanted to take that, and we will talk more about the different energies around different things, because everything carries stuff. But the one thing that I thought was interesting, and I'm still curious about my own connection to it, is ancestors. You know, who is before us? What is our lineage? If it's women in the birth and life, and like I think a lot has changed over the years of the conversation of work and coming from women and creating, you know, how we are operating. But ancestors, how do you connect with your ancestors? A, they have are guiding me in my work. B, still in discovery. C, feel part of a lineage but not sure how to connect. D, what are you talking about? E, I have no real connection. Or F, other. And I think another word is elders. You know, maybe it's not ancestors. That word elders just came up because Brigitta's on the line, and I remember we had a conversation of how we work with the word elders as a sign of wisdom of what's before us, not a negative sometimes with like, oh, aging and elderly and so on, but like wisdom. So that just kind of came to mind as well as ancestors, elders, that kind of idea. So that this showed up.
And so what are we seeing in the side? I'm seeing a lot of it's a lot of mixtures, a lot of ABC. And that's good. That's good, because that's how I felt about this too. I feel I picked C, but C felt the most like mixture-ish E to me.
I'm a C. I have a very interesting lineage that I don't even know if I feel vulnerable enough to talk about, but it's, yeah, I'm in discovery. I actually had a really beautiful, like tearful conversation with Rocio a couple weeks ago about it, but maybe I'll share more later down the road.
Beautiful. So that's A and C. You're mixed. You're still.
I know I definitely felt more connected after carrying a child and giving birth. I think there's a lot of shortcuts or a lot of ways, right, to truth. That was like a good one. That was like a nice, easy one if you choose to pay attention. Twice, actually, 3 years ago today. I was currently pushing 3 years ago today. I delivered my son at 7:00.
I think that deserves a cheers.
Cheers. Oh,
definitely. It's people just like think that like, you know, people just give birth every day, just like people die every day. But it's like women go on, like dead, you know, people who are dying just die. Women go on to survive after childbirth. And I think having a child is truly something unique to women. So
can be.
3 years ago today, you pushed a fucking human being out of you. Cheers, Megan. You're badass.
Cheers. And you know, and here's what I'll say is it's something that can be really powerful. Everybody has different experiences with everything, just like death can be very powerful, just like a pet's death can be the thing that brings you right close to the veil, right? Like the death of a stranger can be the thing that brings you to a place where to me, it was like I clicked in and was like, oh, I hear you, ladies. All right, ladies, like I hear you loud and clear, coming through, getting the messages. So for me, that was an experience.
I actually, Megan, just in terms of full circle, and then we'll get to this about birth, death, yin, yang. compassion, suffering. I have a dear friend that I actually wasn't at the first Death and Dying Collective LA, if you live in Los Angeles, because I was with a friend visiting her mother in Colorado. She was transitioning her mom into a facility. Her mother died today. But she was able to be with her and hold her hand. And I've been very cautious of how I support my friend through the process of end of life with her mom, especially at this time of COVID, and not telling her what to do, but just kind of actively listening. It's so different when you're not, you know, I think you've all experienced this as a friend doing it, or it's different if it's professionally. But she said something profound, Megan, which was, for her, my mom brought me, you know, into the world, and I was able to be with her when she went out of the world. And I said that this, you know, for you, I said this was really you know, your mom wanted you to be there with her, because that was kind of, I feel like, a choice, and that she was able to share that. And it was more for her what she needed.
Answer, right? It's totally not the right answer for everyone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Just because, you know, I have brought two people into this world, I don't necessarily need them both there when I exit. I don't know that they are exactly who I want there, right? So
right.
Like,
that's what I said for her. Like, that was exactly. So
I might take this one out of this world right now.
Say that now. I do think, though, because like I was going to say, like, I don't feel particularly connected to my ancestral line, which is weird because my mom is a genealogist, so we have like our entire line traced back. But to me, it doesn't feel like anything. They're just names on a paper to me. They're people I don't know who they are. I don't feel connected. I'm Greek and Irish and German, and I don't know anything. I mean, I know the vague. I know about Oktoberfest, and that's about as German as I get. Like, I don't connect to those countries
anymore.
Was
canceled this year.
I know, and I was like really sad. I found out that I'm Bavarian, though, and that makes me feel really good because those people know how to party. It made sense. It felt right in my heart that was like specifically the kind of German that we were.
My girlfriend, I know that you know how to party.
Yeah, well, now we know where I get it. It's the Bavarian in me. But I was going to say that part of the reason that I loved hands-on death care is it was the first time that I felt connected to something, and I didn't know how to feel connected to other people, and it made me feel connected to humans, to my humanity, to whatever it is inside of me that I either lost or didn't get because my parents are like being raised by wolves. Like, it just felt really good, you know. And again, nobody has to work with the dead. You don't have to be hands-on. It's just good to know that it's an option, because there are people like me, maybe that this resonates with you and you feel that way too. And it's special to have. I'm like very grateful for it every day, that it's something I can do.
You know that I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Rocio.
Yeah. Well, Jill, I think you should continue sharing what we shared in that conversation, because I think it's relevant to this conversation that we're having right now. And I will say that, I mean, just on my personal trajectory, I mean, my ancestral lineage didn't necessarily become pivotal until I started looking back at my family history. And once I started looking back at my family history, I started to notice that a lot of what I am also doing right now is a lot of that which a lot of them in my lineage have also attempted to do or have done in the past, right? And so there's this conversation around generational like trespassing of information. And, you know, a lot of times they say that we are the embodiment of the unconscious realm of our parents, and we are the embodiment of our grandparent, of the consciousness of our grandparents. So whatever our grandparents, that generation, was able to process through in their life and integrate, we are the embodiment of that truth. With our parents, the unconscious conditioning around what they're living in their life is what we're also embodying and reconciling through. And so it's almost like this generational like gifting that happens in a really weird way. And
gifting.
I wrote that down.
Yeah.
Generational gifting.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, we all get to define how we relate to it, right? It can be a curse or it can be a blessing, you know, it just depends on how we integrate it into our life. But I also I don't always necessarily have the relationship to my direct ancestral lineage, and it's complex, right? a lot of us come from mixed cultures, right? And it's the extrapolation of like, who am I, as we're trying to really belong and find identity. And we start to realize that there's all these other things that we're also part of in some way. And one of the biggest shocking moments for me was when I went back to Spain and I said, this is part of my history that I denied, I rejected for a long time. It was really painful for me. But I said, I'm part of this tradition and this culture too. How do I embrace that in me? How do I allow all those sides to be a part of my livelihood, because it's in me? And just the connection, just briefly around witches. I always find that, there's so many different definitions of how we see witches around culturally across time. And of course, there's like black magic and white magic and everything in between. But, when I look at the actual term of witches, it's like witch, it also means which direction. And in Spanish, the name for witch is called bruja. And a bruja comes from the word called brújula, which is a compass. So it's really about people that are embodying direction, right? And so our connection to these ancestral lineages is hopefully an invitation to say, well, what's my direction? How am I using my inner compass to be able to navigate through this world in a way that feels really heartfelt and that really honors all of that,
Heck yeah. And
So
like
special.
everybody in this room, it's so cool that we all share that connection with death, or that direction.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I want to share what Jill McLennan said to everybody. I don't, because this was kind of applauded by Jen as well. I don't always look at my ancestors as in this human life ancestors. I've been expanding the idea to past life versions of my soul and the other souls that have traveled with me. So it's a continuity, and the movement and so on is so beautiful. Yeah, so Jen, thank you. You agreed with that. It makes, Amber says, it really makes me think that it makes me really think that for me, it's about wanting to find authenticity in now and taking our past and bringing it now to our truth. Yeah, definitely. Oh, right. Wow.
And
Okay.
like my mentees that are here, like what's the first thing that I tell you is get in touch with who you are, and what's your brand, and what are you actually giving and putting out there? What's coming from you, centering.
Yeah.
So
Jill, you and I talked about that process, Ikigai.
Yes, we did.
Identifying in 4 realms. What does the world need? What can you get paid for? What do you love? And what are you good at? And if you can get all 4 of those things in some semblance of balance, I mean, that hits that whole, never work a day in your life thing.
Yeah. That is we're going to theme that. Can we theme that? Yeah. I think it's so important to acknowledge now, but I've already, I was premature. Sorry, Megan. And I put up the next question.
Oh, let's see.
Which of the following is not a natural renewal? A, life and death, B, season, C, magazines, D, animals and plants, or E, other.
Oh my God, my mother will not take me everywhere I move. She puts me straight on her church's magazine list. It haunts me everywhere I go. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Mom, literally, I get it.
So this type of renewal of spirit of who we are coming back. I mean, right now I'm Jewish, and I think I've shared that with you. And this time right now of holidays is between Passover and there's these amazing holiday set in stone things, but it's a total time of journey and renewal and reflection and guidance. And so I think it's the idea of journey or renewal, of constantly looking back. I don't know, when you guys first think of renewal, I mean, I guess you all said C, so good job. High five, drink, because we need to drink more, right, Amber?
Yes.
I got
the bottle.
Yes, someone came prepared tonight.
Yeah. The idea of renewal. But what does renewal mean to all of you? I mean, these are different things. There's so many things that are.
Everyone is saying C, magazines, which is hilarious because I know you planted that question to be funny, but it's totally unnatural. When you get all these weird subscriptions. funny.
That's like an automatic renewal. Then that's kind of like a natural renewal, right? Because you don't have to think about it. It just keeps doing it for you.
Right.
What's something that you would like keep on coming back to? I mean, you're here. I mean, it's work, right? And I think Rocio like being, it's kind of that idea of being about, at least in who we are and what we are, is like coming back to our truth, our renewal. What is it? I still get weird magazine subscriptions from my dad who died over 10 years ago. Wow.
Oh my God.
Intense.
I get those too. My dad was a car guy and I get like Mustangs monthly. It won't stop. I need to figure it out. I know this is a part of like my job to end like stuff, but crazy.
How does it make you feel, Becca, when you get those? Like, I'm curious. I mean, we were talking about renewal, but here it is. It's like, does that remind you stop to think of dad, or like, or fuck you for not accepting he's no longer here. Stop this shit. Like how do you feel?
I honestly think it's funny. My dad was kind of like a weird prankster type. So every time it happens, because it only happens like it's weird, like once in a blue moon, we'll get this random like motorcycle subscription. It's just kind of like hey dad, like, why are we still getting these after 10 years, more than 10 years, like 13 years? It's just like funny. So I laugh.
Yeah. So you laugh and smile and you have a moment with your dad or this motorcycle magazine.
Yeah.
Dads and their magazine subscriptions.
Yep. Yeah.
Natalie was saying he says hi. He's saying hi when it shows up. Yeah.
All right. Do we have one more question that we want to ask?
We do.
I think it's the most fun one.
Best for last.
Okay. So we're going to move on to last. Okay. We're getting to I'm putting it in. I'm doing it, Amber. My favorite witches, it's like witches or which is, A, Samantha Stevens, Bewitched, B, The Witches of Eastwick, C, Sarah Good, The Witches of Salem, D, Sabrina, The Teenage Witch, E, Morgan Le Fay, Camelot, or F, other. Or maybe you're your favorite witch. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's a current witch that, do you know people that still call themselves witches? I don't.
Of course.
Oh, Angelica Houston, a witches.
Wiccan is still like Wiccan is an actual
I'm in like 9
religious
Facebook witch groups.
Yeah.
You're what?
I'm in like 9 Facebook witch groups.
Really? Do you have to do you have to
They'll sniff you out. You can't get in, don't worry.
Do you have to like request to get in it? Like, what kind of questions do you have to answer? They're not closed groups?
It's not what you're thinking of as witchcraft.
Okay. Well, what is it then?
I'm in a group called Kitchen Witches.
Oh.
So I grew up with like very Irish family, and Amber was talking about how this is like a time that's been celebrated all over the place, and so there's so many similarities. And kitchen witchcraft is just sort of like general superstition. Like there was always an altar in my family's kitchen somewhere where just like knickknacks were sort of set up. And if you think about it, it's as simple as just having a place to kind of just stop and pause for a minute. And if you're the woman of the house, or if that's the center of the house and where you can do your business, just having a place that has your little Zen zone, that sort of falls under the realm of kitchen witchcraft. It's things like just superstition.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I think most cultures or religions have some sort of idea about that. And I think, Amber, we were talking about that too, of if the negative or positive, or where things came from.
Yeah.
In terms of witches, and like, the negativity about it, when it's just people being true to themselves.
Right. It basically, if you were a woman that could read or had an opinion or just needed to be sussed out in any way, maybe you looked at someone's husband, depending on what time era or any time era, you were considered a witch. So I thought that we would end our discussion, well, not end, but finish this part of our discussion just talking about what does that mean to you guys? Like, what sort of thoughts do you have on being a woman of intelligence and being considered a witch for that? And like, what does that mean culturally or in society throughout time or even now? I don't know. I used to get bullied a lot as a all my life. And in high school, like I used to have guys call me a witch, which I always thought was really funny and flattering. I was like, thank you, I'll take it. You're a dick. But like, I don't know, like I've been called a witch as a bad thing for being smart and outspoken and having a sailor's mouth and telling people how I felt.
Yeah. Jill was writing, Jill McLennan, my kids tell their friends and teachers I'm a witch. And I try gently to tell them not to say that. Some people have serious misconceptions about what that means. So yeah, Jill, how do you want to share like how do you deal with that? What that makes you feel or the connotation? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so like, I mean, I have an altar. My kids know that I have a practice of witchcraft and, you know, I've tried to be open and honest with them about it because I don't want to like lie to them. But then like when I started hearing, even like on a Zoom call the other day with like their teachers and their friends and like parents, they're like, and my mom's a witch. And I don't want to be like, no, I'm not. But we also live in a small town and I'm already the weirdo. Like I'm always kind of the weirdo in towns. It's just been like Amber said, you know, I grew up, I was always picked on. I was always like this like person that didn't really connect with everybody else. And I'm okay with it, but I also know how brutal people can be. And I'm like, I don't want my kids to pay for it either. If people are like, you know, picking on them because of things. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be open and honest with children, but also try to guide them to be like, yeah, but you might not want to tell everybody that.
So how does that I'm sorry not to define you, like how do you define it? Because like we said, you I don't know many modern day witches. Like I think they're cool, like okay, like, the kitchen witches, but how do you define that for yourself in this day and age?
It's basically my spiritual practice. So a lot of it's meditation. You know, I burn a lot of candles. It's about setting intentions. So even though like you can call it spells, it's really about like just focusing and setting my intentions. And that's where like when I'll try to talk to my ancestors and like ask for guidance. And, you know, I even have like some candles that represent different, you know, goddesses. And so if I really need guidance in something, I'll burn that specific candle. And it's changing over time, you know, depending on where I'm at. You know, I read a lot of tarot cards. I've had experiences with like spirits coming to me even when I didn't want them to. And so I think it was one of those things where like I didn't embrace it for most of my life. I tried to like pretend it wasn't real and like push it away. And then eventually I was like, I just gotta accept it. It's like, it is what it is. But I also do understand that like a lot of people, you know, the guys at work, like, you know, I work with a lot of people that are from Mexico and Puerto Rico, and like they're very superstitious about things. And so they're like, oh my God, you're a witch just because I like read tarot cards. And I'm like, I'm not going to deny it. I'm like, but I promise, like, I'm not going to do anything bad. Like, I don't want to hurt anybody. If anything, I'm just going to like give you a little protection spell because sometimes you guys do really stupid shit and you like make me worry about you. So like, that's the most I'm going to do to you.
My friend, one of my best friends was raised in Africa, and she's like, yeah, we don't fuck around with witchcraft. Like, and there's different definitions of it, right? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't fuck around with the kind of witchcraft that you've seen in places. So there are a lot of definition stuff. I think for a lot of people, it's just being in tune with your intuition, being willing to think creatively. A lot of people will use terms like humanist or natural. I'm going to say the wrong one, but like being connected to the natural world.
Yeah. Brigida was sharing, witches are everywhere. We self-identify and don't necessarily share. Like it's one of those things that it, you know, for good or for bad, you have to keep it internally because it could be misunderstood, right? And that could feel isolating, but also very powerful. I'm not, you know, sure.
Well, it's also the layers of, I mean, I definitely identify with this, where it's, even with my work with water for a long time, there was a lot of inhibition that I had around showcasing this because it felt foreign and people wouldn't understand it. And it's really something that is hidden in the subconscious around persecution. And that has constantly come up for me a lot. I mean, I'm still navigating through all that. And I know I've had regressions to past lives where I had been doing this work. Like, this is not just a lifetime that I've been doing it now, but it's been carried through. But just realizing and understanding that, you know, there's been so many people that have been killed because throughout the history of time, because the dominant culture couldn't understand. And not to say that there isn't, again, the complexities around magic. Magic can be used for good and power in a particular way, and magic can also be used for something that is completely transformative and enlightening, that is aligned to something that we can't always necessarily comprehend. So there's a spectrum of, I think, what we consider witchery, but really is a definition. It's a cultural definition, and it's contextualizing it in where we're at, you know?
Well, that's what I liked about this holiday, because so just like a slight backstory, I put on a benefit or like a fundraiser, I think like 3 or 4 years ago now, and it was for Planned Parenthood. And I learned about this day, and I initially just thought like, oh, it's the Night of the Witches, because that's usually what you see if you see anything about it. And then the more and more I read about it, getting ready to talk about it with you guys, I realized that this was really almost had nothing to do with witches. This had everything to do with Christianity smothering out what they thought was wrong and different. And it was, so the celebration of fertility, the celebration of life. And so there were all these reasons to get pregnant right now, because if you're pregnant right now, you're not going to have a big, large baby while you're trying to work the fields. There were all these practical reasons, which is what I sort of associate with women and witchcraft, is like a woman who understands how the planet works, a woman who understands seasons and understands herbs and understands medicine, which is scary to people who don't want women to have that kind of power over them. And so I really thought that this was such a great thing to talk about, because I see it here on the side, like a lot of people saying like that this witch can be extrapolated into so many different layers. But to me, this was another example of the greater culture trying to smash out something, and also a really amazing way that we persist, right? We hang on to our ideals. So Christianity was like, hey, so here's the deal. We have this woman, her name's Walpurga. She was canonized today. Today's Saint Walpurga's Day. And then everybody was like, cool. I'll meet you outside, get the bonfire going, get the drinks, Saint Walpurga, woo! And like, you know, like people are just like, we'll do what we have to do to survive. And I think that's so great, because we see this all over the world in ways where the majority of the culture is trying to smash out people, take away language, take away culture, take away children, your clothing, everything, so that you can become mainstream. And that we could have all these different conversations about other ways, other religions that people hold on to in the Caribbean and Haitian culture, and all the way that like hoodoo and voodoo came about from like all of the saints. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna go off on a tangent. Anyways, I think it's really cool. I think there's a huge rabbit hole here. I hope that if you guys can take away one thing, it's to really learn about that, because I think it's beautiful. I love the way that we hang on to the things that we love. And I hope that, you know, I think it seems like we're all on the same page, but I see so much of that happening in America right now, or in the US. And it makes me sad, because when I started off this conversation just saying that I feel lost and I don't feel connected, it makes me sad that we're doing this to people. And I think that it resonates with us not feeling connected to anything anymore, you know. And I just hope that we find value in other people's cultures and can appreciate. And I'll stop right there. Yeah.
Actually, Jenna or Janae, do you want to tell us a little bit about your Jamaica Antigua culture?
Am I here?
Oh yeah.
I don't know how this.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
That's
Oh
okay.
yeah, we said we weren't going to do it, and we did. It wasn't me. Okay.
No, I don't. I'm really excited that you guys are talking about this stuff, because I mentioned earlier I'm adopted, and I really just come to know a little more. Like I always knew that my mom was half Black, but not too much about, you know, I knew my grandfather was from Jamaica, but I've kind of, you know, had to piece things together for myself with just ancestry, you know, research, and kind of more of an imagination piece for me. So it's been really fun for me to kind of connect to, yeah, like voodoo or any kind of sort of Caribbean spiritual traditions and whatnot, and then back to, you know, where it all comes from in Africa, and it just all somehow links together. And yeah, I'm still learning. I'm still learning a lot, so it's just intriguing to me.
Learning is constant. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. I resonated with what you said about like imagining what our ancestry is like, and that's a lot of like the process that I'm going through right now is, you know, imagining how I got where I am and knowing that it came by way of trauma and rape and land theft and a lot of other ways. Yeah, it's really, and then losing an entire like spirituality and like religious like side to my family in the process. Like it was just crazy. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. There was the Massacre of the Dreamers, talks about persecution during the Aztecs. So I know Rocio and Rose were speaking about that. That might be something we'll put on our website later on, and people want to refer back to that. Rocio, is there anything specific about that?
It was just this book that I talked about when I did my dream workshop, and Rose was part of that. It's this book that I read back in college, and she basically talks about this massacre that happened when basically at the height of the Aztec Empire, and a lot of dreamers and seers in the community were basically having in a critical mass the same dreams around that. You know, these ships were going to be coming, these like alien ships. And so they told Moctezuma, who was he was reigning the empire at that time, and he didn't want to hear that because he knew that that was happening, and the demise of the empire was in some ways happening because of colonization. This is when the first Spaniards started to come. And so he ended up massacring a vast amount of dreamers and seers, and a lot of them ended up fleeing. And so again, this is just another example in cultural time and history where that has happened. There's been a shunning of people that have had vision, whether the vision was something that we considered good or not. It's just, you know, people that have been tapped into that ability.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing. We'll put that in the on the website. And I think it's depending on what traditions or history, what's honored and what's not. You know, like if you're a dreamer or prophet, you know, but we don't have to get into the religious kind of aspect of things of like what people, they've seen a dream and what comes of that, you know, what the message is. So it's very interesting kind of stuff. But Brigitte, I wanted to come back to you. You said preparing the maypole before dawn, bringing flower and herb offerings. Like offerings are such a big part of things, right? Inviting all generations to participate in a ceremony that weaves community and nature together. Is that something we're going through right now, or what is?
Jill and I have been bringing Jill brought me a May basket. She doesn't know that that's what it was, but when you brought me flowers, alcohol, and toilet paper, that was like a May basket. Jill left me a very nice present the other day on my doorstep. And I don't know if anybody else has been doing that, but like me and my friends have been leaving gift baskets. I left Jill some bread that I baked, and I was thinking like, oh, this is like May baskets. We're bringing each other little gifts. It's very cute. So.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did you want me to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, now that it's kind of been brought up. Yeah, definitely, please.
Yeah, it's just northern. So I grew up in Holland, and northern European countries, they do this beautiful thing where traditionally it would be a maypole would be erected, and so it's this pole, and then from it are these long strips of fabric, and it's erected before dawn. The women come and bring the herbs and flower offerings all around it, and then the community comes, little kids, all the generations come, and the smallest of kids take the first strings and they walk around the maypole clockwise, and then the girls go clockwise and the boys go counterclockwise. So it's a weaving that starts to happen, and then the older kids come and do the same thing, and by the end of it, the pole has this completely woven fabric, like all down the, like a shaft. And it's this, to me, it always feels like it's this I often think in terms of weaving, that what we're doing when we're building community is this kind of weaving a fabric that can hold us all. So for me, it's like, it's really strong. Like you can't pull that apart, you know? And I love that it's this connection to nature, the seasons, and an opportunity for all the generations to come and for the older generations to witness this weaving that the youngest ones are doing, right?
The
and to them, it's
continuity,
just, they're just doing, you know, they're just performing something without necessarily knowing when you're 4 or 5 what the heck you're doing. But what you're learning is you are learning what it means to grow community. You're learning what it means to weave and to interact and to, you know, kind of, you need to step sideways because the other person's coming by. And I don't know, to me, it's just a beautiful, a beautiful ceremony.
Is that still going on? Is that a cultural thing that's still, or is it hard to find? Or
so now I would say there are small communities that do that. Even when I was a kid, it was not, you know, it was like smaller communities that were still doing that. So I would say anywhere that you're seeing communities that are living closer to nature or that are making a choice, they're maybe anthroposophic in their teaching of the connection to nature and having that as part of their guidance in the community. But it's a, you know, it's a very, very old tradition that was eliminated because it was thought of to be part of a witch's ceremony, right? So a lot of places that was kind of pushed aside. And there's something about, you know, of course, the maypole as this almost phallic symbol, and the, you know, spring.
Almost.
Well, not almost, but, you know, and there's springtime. So there's so many connections on so many different levels.
And in the Western world, so many of those symbols have been adopted into our Easter practices, right? We have our baskets full of flowers. We, instead of having a terribly phallic symbol, there is the symbol of bunny rabbits, and we all know what bunnies do. And there's also the symbol of eggs hidden. Eggs that are hidden. So that's another symbol of fertility. So many of those fertility symbols were just adopted and applied to the nearest local Christian holiday. And I think that what we're seeing is, you know, Brigida, it's so amazing. My grandmother in America used to do maypole dances in Oklahoma, where they had really vibrant farm culture, right? So they were really tied to the ground or to the earth. And so what I think that we're seeing is something really special is that there's people who are alive who did that, who are you're going to see that come back. I mean, I believe that next year when we're looking back on the 1-year anniversary of coronavirus, we're going to be having some serious ceremonial experiences. And I wouldn't be surprised if some springtime celebrations come in a new way. And Amber, I do want to point out what you said about timing birth and about how a lot of these celebrations really are about, you know, we talk about fertility of land, but you know, keeping a society growing and making sure that your healthy childbearing women weren't dying or missing out on a season of labor. Like, we can't overlook that. And what you know, I'm going to raise a slancha to women for turning that sad truth into something that was a celebration. So cheers to that.
And I just want to say, me personally, I'm a little pissed at the propaganda around how Hollywood has permeated and conditioned us to see certain things in culture over time. But it's just, there's this, as I was listening to Brigida, like talking about this ceremony, right? Like, I think it was the movie Summerland or something. I don't know if anybody got to see it. It was like this thriller. Okay. Anyways.
Midsummer,
Summerland. A beautiful, aesthetically beautiful film around celebration of fertility and creation and all the, but it was a thriller, and it kind of, to me, it took away, and it's almost like a way to disrupt our ability to look at these ancient rituals, right, as in a light form. And there's just so many things happening around celebration, like why people are calling themselves witches now, why there's so many witchy circles or healing circles around it. Like that culture is definitely emerging. At the same time, I'm also feeling and seeing that the opposite is happening. This is polarity of life. Like once one thing starts to kind of emerge, there's going to be a push. There's going to be a contraction that's also happening. I don't know if any of you paid attention, but like Microsoft had recently just sponsored Marina Abramovich. I don't know if any of you know who she is, but she's like an artist. She calls herself, she calls herself a ritualistic artist, right? But her work is really interesting. And again, it's all based on interpretation, but Microsoft basically sponsored her. And there's a lot of connections to her and doing like satanic rituals and things like that. So again, how we're celebrating death feels a lot more on the darker side than it does around celebrating life, even within the culture of death. And that for me is like, oh my gosh, it's in our faces. Like how did Microsoft, one of the biggest companies, is also sponsoring this artist that feels like there's an affinity, right, to something that doesn't feel, it's not sprouting life amidst this thing that is so natural. It feels almost really grotesque. But anyways,
interesting.
Yeah, they put the video down.
Say one thing, I have been present for birth and death, and I'll tell you, one of them is very gruesome.
Birth.
And it is not
100% birth.
One of them is.
Megan and I talk about this all the time. Like she tries to share like pieces of her birth story and I'm like, stop, I'm getting sick, like dizzy, like I can't, like yeah. I'm like, I can help people die all day. Birth,
yeah.
No.
I as we're closing now, and I'll leave it to Amber to close, but the idea of ritual and altars, or creating something and community for ourselves to share, and making that a beautiful thing, a ritual thing to acknowledge our space, and things that are important to us, and just holding space for it. I love that. For Megan, it's in her kitchen, or Jill, Jill McClendon has it. And I have my my altar behind me, my set design behind me is a kind of an altar for the books and the things that are important to me, but, or getting something organic in it. But I welcome you guys all in this time of focus being ourselves to create a space, an altar, or something. And I know that's something Brigitte also just did with some flowers, and creating something, an altar, a space that is divine for you right now. So I offer that for all of you to kind of think about in our spaces of the recreation and renewal here of just an altar, altered spaces. So Amber, closing cheers, closing.
Yeah. All right. So
closing
cheers to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is really fun. Drink. And oh, bye, Janae. Says phone dying out. I don't have a poem, but I do have a donut recipe, because donuts are my poetry. So I put this in the side. But if you want to go to our website, I put like a little. It looked easy to me. I looked over a few different donut recipes, and I found one that was pretty simple to make some Scandinavian donut holes, essentially. So that is my poem to you, is baked goods. So
thank you, Amber. Oh, I love it so much. All right, guys. Cheers. Hopefully see you next week.
Thanks, guys.